Hi.
Good afternoon. I'm David Okada, a producer and journalist at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm pleased to be conducting an Asian American Film Lab interview today in the Arts and Entertainment section. We have some guests today, Ginger Yifan Chen and Keelan Bowers, who will be our guests. But before we even start that, I'm going to ask a question of our president of Asian American Film Lab, Jennifer Beatty Yen. So Jennifer, could you tell us a little bit about how once the screenwriter submits their project and it's approved, and then they make all the modifications, what happens to that film afterwards?
Well, this is a question that probably Ginger and Keelan will get into a lot as they describe what the Unfinished Works program is.
That's terrific.
But it's a long-running program, and we workshop all kinds of scripts, from TV pilots to feature-length films, plays, even something as small as a monologue. And sometimes those films, like Ray Young's what was originally called Yellow Fever and then became Front Cover, become full-length feature movies that make the festival circuit and are released in theaters, which is always, the goal. That's what we hope for. And we bring in media and investors and people like that, if the script is at the proper stage, to try to help these writers get a leg up and really push their script forward. But then in other cases, we'll have students or people who are just beginning. And in that case, this is more of a networking and an opportunity to workshop the piece and get education.
Sounds great. So now we'll go to our guests.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Always a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure to see you all.
All right, so our guests today are Ginger Yifan Chen and Keelan Bowers. So Ginger, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with Asian American Film Lab.
First of all, I'm a writer, and I used to, I was led to this position because I used to host workshops at college. So I was the president of Chapman Screenwriters Guild at Chapman University. And I was lucky enough to find an ad looking for new coordinators on Facebook. Social media just spreads everything around. It's something I had experience in, and I applied and I got it. So
that's terrific.
Yeah, there we go.
And the same for you, Keelan. How did you get or find out about Asian American Film Lab, and what is your background?
Well, I found out about the Asian American Film Lab also through social media as well, like Ginger. I'm a part of a Facebook group filled with people of color all across the US, and there was a posting about a coordination position for a screenwriter's workshop for the Asian American Film Lab, and I also have a background in that from college. I actually was the founder of my university's screenwriters workshop. Shout out to Temple University.
Same university? Fantastic.
But yeah, it was amazing work while I was doing it for college. But one of the things that I saw was a lot of the writers, their stories weren't as diverse as our world was. I mean, I was living in Philadelphia, which is a huge melting pot, and I wasn't.
Oh,
really
it's appropriate for the elections today too, right?
I know. But yeah, so it was an amazing opportunity to be able to work for the Asian American Film Lab, where we're specifically focusing on creators, writers, actors, filmmakers who are creating stories that are inherently diverse.
So why don't we start with you, Ginger? Can you tell us a little bit about the Film Lab and about Unfinished Works?
Yeah, the Film Lab, we're a nonprofit organization. We're basically pretty much focused on the promotion and support of gender and ethnic parity in film and television programming. So the Unfinished Works program has been running for about 20 years now. We are the new coordinators for this year, and we're here to make sure that we, every month we're going to host an event in which we have a 40-minute table read, and then afterwards a live online workshop to help Asian American screenwriters see their work performed and see how it can be improved.
All right. I think I attended one of those sometime back when you could actually go to meetings and physically, you know, attend. But now everything's virtual, so it's a little different.
It's opened things up, actually. We went virtual because of the pandemic, of course. But since the Film Lab is based in New York, Keelan and I are on the West Coast. I'm in San Francisco. He's in Los Angeles.
I see.
So now, what we talked about as a team is that we can now expand to, you know, hosting more online events so that there's more accessibility. So now, you know, people on the West Coast like me, we don't need to be sitting there in the room anymore. We can be on the Zoom call and still participate from across the country.
So Keelan, since you're both on the West Coast, when the day comes when we can have live events, are you going to have the unfinished works meetings in the West Coast, or are you going to still continue with East Coast projects?
Well, that's an excellent question. That's probably a little higher up a decision-making process, but I would look forward to the day where we can all meet in one room together, because there are things that happen when you're in the room together with the screenwriter, with actors, with an audience, that doesn't necessarily happen when you're separated through virtual connection. But that being said, there are things that we can do virtually that we couldn't do before. Like Ginger and I are based out of the West Coast, and we can volunteer our resources and volunteer our expertise and work with a company that's based out of New York City. But also we can expand our audience as well. I mean, part of the Film Lab, the Unfinished Works program, is allowing the audience to be a part of the reading process, the workshop process. And that is an amazing thing, because it allows us to not only get opinions from professionals, but opinions from the layman as well, to see how the story affects them and what the things that they see that are reflected in their media.
Fascinating. Now, I understand from Jennifer, who is the president of Asian Film Lab, that a big part of the program is bringing light to underrepresented faces, stories and voices. And then, of course, you address and give opportunities to people of color, Asian descent. So I'm curious now, how does that work? In other words, an unfinished work is a script. Could you explain what that process is, and maybe how a script is submitted?
Yeah.
Either one can answer that.
Go ahead, Keelan.
Okay. I was just going to say that first things first, we want to make sure that, so the first thing the writer will do is submit a log line to the program. What we'll do is we'll kind of...
question to you is, what is a log line? So that the audience understands what that is. You may understand, but I may not, and the audience may not.
So sorry, I was like jumping right into lingo. But so basically a log line is kind of what a light summary of what the script is about. It'll tell you who the main characters are, what the main conflict in the story is, and the thrust of the script, what keeps the story going. And so, you know, a log line for something like The Godfather would be Italian mob family who has to rise to I've never seen The Godfather, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, it's a great film. You should see it.
Thank you. I really should. I really should watch it. It is one of the... We studied it in film class, and it's one of those things that, like, I read about it, but I never really went ahead and watched it. But ever since the quarantine, I should sit down and watch it. But that being said, a log line is a brief summary of the script. And so what they'll do is they'll go ahead and submit that to us, Ginger and I, and we'll vet the log lines to make sure that they're kind of matching the program in its essential, in its inheritance, or in its at its core. So who the story's about, making sure that, you know, some log lines you can just tell that they're going to be diverse. I mean, we had some incredible log lines that were set in this year. One's like Two Countries. That's the next workshop that we're going to have coming up. It's a story about 4 female middle school age Chinese adoptees. And so immediately, you know, okay, this is a story about inclusion. And then there are other log lines that don't do that. And so we have to say, okay, can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, what your script is about? Ginger, do you want to take it from here?
That's a pretty good summary. This year, there has been a little more, we came in a little later in the game where some of the team have already seen some of the works and, you know, vetted some of them. So we kind of got the finalists this time. Next time, who knows? It depends. But yeah.
So when you say, let me interrupt you one second. When you say finalists, how many script or screenwriting projects do you actually evaluate and approve?
This time, not much, only about 8 so far, but that's only because we keep getting emails all the time now that we have the unfinished works email of people trying to submit work. So there's always new submissions coming in. I'm afraid this time around we don't have that information because we already had the rest of the team look at all the other submissions.
That's fine.
We're very lucky.
No, you're lucky that the selection was made. So I guess once a script or a, I guess, log line is approved, then what is the process and how long does that take until, let's say I submit something, you review it, and then you say, okay, we're good to go, or let's make this modification and then we're okay. What is that time frame so someone can anticipate how long that might take?
We don't really work on a rolling basis right now. We have 4 months, 1 workshop per month, and we have the schedule ready. We had it ready in October, I believe. So we sort of had to like organize and make sure that everything fits together thematically. So I think if anyone were to submit, they would know a month or 2 before everything gets started and have a full roster, and we confirm it all together. So it won't be like if you send in an email, you'll get confirmed 2 weeks after. There's just like a hard deadline for, you know, when we tell the rest of the team what we picked, when we tell the rest of the team how we're going to organize things. So it all comes in together in the end.
Okay, sounds good.
There was do you mind if I jump in?
No,
really
go ahead,
quickly?
please.
Yeah.
Please,
I was just gonna add that there was a short list that we were given initially, but it took us about 3 to 4 weeks to take in some of the log lines that we received on top of the finalist submissions, read their scripts, discuss it with each other to make sure that both of us kind of like where the direction the screenplay is going and that it's viable enough where we can have a table read and it will be productive. And so I would say for anyone that's submitting for next slate, it would take about, let's say 2 to 3 weeks for us to truly register your script, have it read, and then process it to see if it's viable for a table read or a workshop.
So once you have the table read, and I guess everything is done virtually, so you have an audience and panelists who are all virtual. They do the reading, usually have actors doing the reading, and then they get some feedback from the audience. So at that point, what happens? Do they start taking the feedback and modifying their script and then resubmit it to you? Or do they start taking those modifications, start looking for actors for the film, and then move forward?
That all depends on the writer. We don't have a set program for them afterwards. There certainly have been resubmissions and people who have gotten feedback have come back to us. But ultimately, where the project goes depends on the writer. It could be contests, it could be production, or you know, they even have the option to just take the notes and not do anything if they really want to do it. We let them go.
I'm not continuing.
we let them go after the workshop. I think something that could be good for us to do, like we give them the opportunity to have some social media presence. They can connect with the other writers. They can, you know, they can find a way to keep working on it. But in the end, we don't supervise what happens after the workshop. The workshop is for them to hear it, to experience it, and to get the feedback separately. They're not in the meeting room. So the way we structured this year is that they're not going to be in the meeting room where the script is being discussed to say defend it or explain things. They're just going to hear people interpret it and honestly give their feedback, and that's just that 40-minute workshop will be all the notes that they get.
So it's more for clarification on trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish and the message that the script is addressing.
Definitely. I would say it's twofold, kind of like what Ginger was saying, and also what Jennifer was saying when we first started. It's an excellent opportunity for writers to have their scripts heard. And that's an important part of the writing process, making sure that your characters feel like they're real people, like they're living, breathing characters, and that helps with the authenticity of your script. And so it's a wonderful platform for a writer to come in at any stage of development, whether it's a feature film that's been edited and it's on the umpteenth draft or whatever. Never title a draft a final draft, because it's never the final draft. But or the writer who has just started with a monologue and is just trying to see if a character is something that is worth putting the time into that it takes to get to a fully formed script or a fully formed pilot or feature or short or so on and so forth. But one of the things that Ginger and I decided to do this time is to pair some of the writers together. And that has created an interesting dynamic where we'll be able to have writers from that are much more experienced and less experienced to kind of speak with each other, get to know each other, and truly create a bonding, networking experience for them in the future.
And we're aiming to organize the feedback in a way where the writer does have some, context. What do they want? What do they want to focus on? What do they want off the table where they know that there's some faults with it and they don't need discussion? They're already working on it. So that's sort of the participation the writer has, and sort of the way we can structure it, and sort of, just make sure that everyone stays concentrated and focused on what's the most important thing. So it's all a huge collaboration.
So if let's say an experienced writer and a less experienced writer get together, can they jointly do a project and resubmit, or they just continue to do the project together?
I would love it if they resubmitted together. That would be It'd
be even better, right?
I feel like that would be exactly what we hope that they do, is find a person who they can really truly gel with, because writing at its core, writing for television especially, is a collaborative art form. And you'll never be alone when you're in a writer's room. You're never going to be alone when you're working on a TV show. Feature films are a little different, but even then, some feature films, you can have 2, 3, 4 writers working on it. And so truly it's about connecting people, trying to make sure that stories are as diverse as possible, and making sure that these writers get a chance to expand their circles, if you will.
We're here to be a catalyst. That's how I would summarize it.
All right, well, that's good. That's actually good.
Yeah.
Once they're at the point that they want to produce a film, whether it's a short or documentary or full-length film, do they have to select actors, number one, that are either people of color or Asian, part of the cast, and do they go to your actors directory to look for talent?
That our actor directory is mostly Asian Americans. They're not required to cast a certain way. We have scripts that have white characters and black characters and all sorts, and that is like, they're still in the Asian American film directory. So it's very diverse. The films that we picked, the scripts that we picked, do focus on Asian American characters, so they naturally have a lot of Asian American characters. So it's not really a question of a requirement. We don't really say, hey, like, this is we don't, you can't have this read because you're not casting enough Asian people. And the whole natural process is that we are the Asian American Film Lab, and it's going to be Asian American narratives and Asian American stories and Asian American actors.
But you would at least have to have. All right, let me ask this differently. If it's focused on Asian American or Asian characters,
Yeah.
I would assume that you'd have to select at least an Asian for the part, not Scarlett Johansson to play an Asian.
We would hope. We would hope, right?
The writers are involved in the casting process.
Okay.
So it's not, we are all in collaboration in reaching out to these actors, and they look through the directory and they pick who they think is representative of it. And I have, the people that we pick, I have full faith that they understand that they won't cast a Scarlett Johansson for a character. We sort of make sure that doesn't happen.
And we hope that these relationships carry on after they're done with the Unfinished Works program as well, regardless of if they resubmit or not. These are connections that you're making in real time. So these actors are people that we hope that they can feel free to reach out to once they feel like their script is at the level of production, that they can reach out to, and that they'll be, once we can film again, in a collaborative process.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm gonna ask this a little differently. Once the film is produced and it's completed based upon the script that they submitted, at that point, what happens to that film? Does it get submitted? Let's say it fulfills the requirement for a 72-hour shootout, or does it get submitted to international film festivals? What happens to that body of work that they worked on?
Go ahead,
Ginger, go ahead, you started.
Okay,
sorry, yeah.
I'll start. That again, we don't have a huge supervision of what happens after the workshop. It's a lot of it is up to the writer, but the writer will always be connected to us, to Unfinished Works, right? If they want us to say, put out a social media post, say, look at this script that we, did a reading of, it's now produced. It's now at this film festival. That's something that they have with us. Otherwise, yeah.
Do you facilitate that, or do you help them
No,
find the venue?
No, we do not. That's up to them. We don't do like I said, we're more of a catalyst and not as much hand holding afterwards.
If they wanted to submit to 72-hour shootout, that would be something they can definitely do that. And the Film Lab is more than happy to support any filmmaker who's created a work and wants to try to get it out there, and also submit to international film festivals as well. But I mean, there was an interview that you all did with Tyler, who was fantastic yesterday, I believe. Yeah. But 72-hour, one of the wonderful things is that you're able to get it broadcasted as well on television, on YouTube. And so it does provide a wonderful kind of beautiful merging of the two programs if you're taking through production into 72-hour.
Now, do you provide any resources to them through Unfinished Work, or is it primarily the feedback mechanism that you're providing? And of course, the selection of the script.
Yeah, it's primarily the workshop and the feedback. And of course, we have the social media presence that they get. We have a following here, and they would get a shout out on social media, and people will get to know them from seeing their work. So we have that, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, all right, we're gonna go back to maybe your past, okay? You've both had experience in either script writing or editing or some aspect producing, some aspect of film. Now you're with Asian American Film Lab. So what skill sets either did you bring to the table, or have you gained through being associated with Asian American Film Lab? So I'll address that to you, Ginger, first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm learning leadership and organizing. Those are skills that I'm still working on how to engage in a community. So that's something I'm working on through here. I'm a script reader. I did some work for Austin Film Festival as a script reader. So I think these three things are the things I associate most with the film lab, with unfinished works. I also do film directing and editing, and that could, maybe I could apply to the 72-hour shootout, but right now, not yet.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm a little too busy with coordinating.
Well, no. I totally understand.
Yeah.
And Keelan, the same question to you. You've either produced or written something, and so I find myself that the Asian American Film Lab provides a venue for many skill sets, and then you learn also by attending workshops and other things. So, same question to you, Keelan. But you can go to your background and whatever you did before, and then what are you finding valuable from a film lab?
Definitely. I mean, I come from a background, as Ginger was kind of talking about, of reading scripts, writing myself. And so this has been a wonderful position to be in because it allows me to work on leadership skills, talking to people, connecting through social media, all things that I was aware of and worked on the side for my own self, but never had to do in a professional format. And I think that this has been an amazing experience to be able to do that to this magnitude. But also just as a screenwriting nerd, it's an amazing experience to be able to read someone's script, see the things that they do with action lines or what's happening, describing dialogue, describing characters, even how someone says something in parentheticals, and seeing the technical side of what different writers are doing and seeing what I can steal on the side has been just a wonderful experience.
They say, by stealing, you give credit to whoever originally thought of it, right? So
exactly,
you give them credit. They came up with an idea, you found it valuable, and therefore you adopted it.
Yes, adopted it. I like that.
Yeah, just to add on, I just realized that I'm also bringing in some budding design skills. I'm slowly learning some graphic design for social media posts, and I'm vaguely in love with New York and the New York film scene. So I hope that this could bring me to the New York film scene someday.
Oh, so you might leave the West Coast and come to New York?
I would love to be in New York City or
My heart.
Long Island at least.
Well, that's close enough. You can get to New York City.
Yeah.
Once the pandemic is finished, I think you both can look at those options.
Yeah.
Or at least visit the New York area, right?
Have some people there, yeah.
Well, I think that was fascinating, and I find that I'm looking forward to the next finished work and
November 20th.